Welcome in. It's another edition of the Doyle and Derek podcast here with the IndyStar. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. The star, as always, is my good friend, the award-winning columnist Gregg Doyel. And Greg, this is a Combine edition, and I know you love nothing more, baby, than the NFL Combine. Hell yeah.
I was there yesterday. Yeah. Oh, by the way, so this week, hopefully people are hearing it better than last week. And if you're wondering, Clark Wade is our guru and our genius. And you think when you have a podcast with a longtime radio guy like Derek Schultz, you think that your podcast is in good hands technologically. Turns out we need Clark Wade.
We do, yeah.
So let's just be clear about that. But yeah, I'm at the Combine yesterday, and I'm watching these people. I don't know, what network they're on, but they're sitting there and they're talking, they're smiling, they're happy to be there. I'm looking at you guys like, don't you fools realize this is all nonsense? Everybody, this is not the Super Bowl. This is not the Final Four. We're watching guys in underwear run sprints. This is silly, and everybody's here like it's not a big deal. I'm sorry, it's not.
There is nothing that shows this country's obsession more with the National Football League than this week, to me. Oh, this is the most – the NFL by nature is over the top. This is the most over the top of all the over-the-top things that the league does.
Because all you got to do is to show how crazy people are is just say Joe Burrow, 9 inches. And a lot of times you say that about somebody and like this is an X-rated podcast. But no, everybody knows what I'm talking about. Joe Burrow, 9 inches. And is that too small? It's ridiculous. We know his hand length. I don't care about his hand length.
And how many hours of how many radio shows have been dedicated to that? How many lines of how many columns have been dedicated to a dude's hand size?
Let me tell you, it's all about lazy journalism. And I've been guilty of this in the past at CBS. I'm not anymore at the Star. But you get something, you almost look at, and hell, you had a show, of course, if Joe Burrow played if the Colts were thinking about drafting him,
we would have talked about it for 4 hours.
Oh, you and Query would talk about 4 hours because
we'd have a hand size expert probably come on the show,
right? Because it's easy and it seems more important when there's a really local angle to it. But there's very few local angles here except for the Colts, and so I'm looking at the Combine and all these people from all these newspapers all over the country. They're all in here, and the Athletics here, and I'm just looking at all you guys like, you dummies! You're spending a fortune of your company's money to watch people in underwear. I'm embarrassed.
And it's just crazy to think, and this is, all of this, as much as you and I are complaining about it, all of it has been Indy's gain because what is this, a $30 million downtown economic impact, and, the eyes of the NFL and the sports world are here on our great city, so ultimately it's a great thing for Indy for the event to be here, but the way that it's grown, if you talk to somebody who covered this thing 20 years ago, or even, the first radio year that I had where I had some sort of a show was 2007, and we did a live show from the convention center before the renovation. And I remember being in like some random coat room at the convention center, and an agent walked in with this running back from Tulane. He's like, "Hey, this guy's
was that Matt Forte?
Matt Forte." He's like, "You want to talk to him? I think he's going to have a good career." And we were like, "Sure." And we talked to Matt Forte, and I remember, it not being a big deal really at all. And now you've got fans lining up for autographs. They know where these guys are staying, and it's crazy. The coverage and everything that is going on with this. But let's talk about it, Greg, because there are some things that are important that kind of come from this. It's not all nonsense. And both Chris Ballard, Greg Ballard, of course, the former mayor,
right?
Chris Ballard and Frank Reich spoke. Also, we had the Jim Irsay press conference on Sunday. Anything at all jump out to you about either of those sessions?
Well, first, let me back up just enough to say, while the Combine is ludicrous for all these media people, I'm thrilled it's here. Just like you said, I'm thrilled it's here. And in fact, somebody tweeted out, Jim Aiello tweeted out something about Chris Ballard says we're the best city for the Combine, and I retweeted it by saying, damn right. So I'm glad it's here. I just don't want to have to go to it myself.
It better stay here.
Oh, please stay here.
Yeah.
And so I can keep ignoring it here. I don't want to ignore it in Phoenix. I want to ignore
it.
Right. Oh, God, never in
Can
LA.
you imagine?
No, here's a couple things that struck me is, one is Jim Irsay really can't keep a secret. That's one thing. He's the guy that told us about Andrew Luck's, the severity of his injury. He's the one that told us that Andrew Luck's a head case, the 4 inches between his ears. He was the guy that gave us clues without wanting to. He just couldn't help himself. Mm-hmm. And then he's the guy that basically said, yeah, Costanzo's coming back. And then he said, and I got in trouble on Twitter because, we tweeted the story out by saying Irsay is confident, it looks like Costanzo's coming back or something. And I tweeted that by saying he didn't really say that, but okay. And he didn't really say that. What I didn't know was that our reporters kind of have been told behind the scenes by people that it was happening. No one told me that. Mm-hmm. But the point is that Irsay was that was also a clue. Like he was kind of, I mean, he knew Costanzo was coming back, and he can't keep a secret. So that's not news. I'm just kind of tickled that we have an owner here who, we complain about people. They don't say anything. Irsay says too much, and that's great. He very rarely says too much in a bad way. He says just too much information, and I'll take that. Otherwise, Costanzo coming back is a big deal. That was news, but no, I didn't learn anything about what the Colts will do or won't do nothing.
It's kind of the same runaround with the quarterback situation, which I do want to dive into, but you wrote, and I think you're exactly right, the first big domino of the offseason has now fallen with Costanzo deciding to come back, because now you at the very least, you lift that uncertainty out of it, and you don't have to worry about, let's say, the Colts drafting an offensive tackle at 13.
Right, because clearly quarterback is more important than left tackle. But the Colts have a quarterback. They might not love him. Who knows? They might. We just can't really tell what they think. But they don't have to get they had to get a left tackle. Mm-hmm. Had to. So, in fact, heck, I could have written it this way. Costanzo coming back makes it that much easier to get rid of Brissett, because now instead of spending your most money in free agency, although that's unlikely, or your best draft pick on a lineman, you can now go use that on a quarterback if you want. So whatever they do, Costanzo coming back is the first domino. He's really the key that unlocked a whole bunch of locks.
I'm happy for him because he, to some extent, was like the Miles Turner of the Colts, where he was the popular guy to kind of be the punching bag. And in reality, I think people are finally starting to realize just how important, valuable, and good Costanzo has been. You don't have to be all-world at left tackle. You just have to be healthy. And he's mostly been healthy during his career. And the fact that he played next to an orange road cone at left guard for the first 5 or 6 years of his career before Quentin Nelson came into town, I think Nelson has really kind of unlocked what Costanzo could do now that he's got a reliable and dominant left guard right next to him.
What's shocking is that Costanzo he's been a Pro Bowl alternate but didn't get to go because none of the tackles missed it, so he didn't go. So he hadn't gone to the Pro Bowl yet. And that's shocking to me because he's been considered, not one of the best 2 or 3, but he's been considered one of the top third, I would guess top 10 left tackles for 8 or 9 years. And normally a guy like that eventually gets his due and gets a Pro Bowl, at least one. You throw him a Pro Bowl bone. I mean, he deserves it, but I find that very strange. But I think that folks around here, after listening to Ballard talk and Quentin Nelson talk and other people talk about how good Costanzo is and Frank Reich, folks are realizing, including me, that even if he doesn't have the accolades, he's big-time legit.
Quarterback's Day was just the other day. Jordan Love, who's been kind of one of the hot Colts targets. We know Chris Ballard went out to see him out in Utah during his college season this year.
He's the only quarterback Ballard went and saw. So let's keep talking about Jordan Love because apparently Ballard didn't see anybody else.
And there have been others, Eason, Fromm, all these other guys that we talk about potential round 1 or round 2 spots for the Colts to possibly take a quarterback. Any of them stand out to you at all? Did you get a chance to hear any of them talk?
Only on highlights. No, I don't think you're understanding. I do as little as possible at the combine as I have to. I mean, as little because I
don't blame you.
This is the kind of thing that a fan would really. I mean, it'd be eye opening to you, and probably in a good way. You guys wouldn't hate this like I hate it because I'm just sick of it. I've done it too much, and this is the kind of thing you do once and you've done it enough. But you got to see it once. But it's a zoo. They've got 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 people lined up at podiums 30 feet apart throughout the convention center, and the speakers are all blaring, and you can hear everybody talking at once. And I don't like a lot of input. I don't do well with that. Like, for example, you got that bottle of water, and I hope you stop drinking it because every time you take a sip, I want to just, throw myself through the window.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay, but I don't like noise.
I'll put it over here.
Thank you very much. To me, the combine is silly, but it's eye-opening to see. I tried to describe it yesterday. Ballard was at a podium between Dan Brooks of the Falcons and Rick Spielman of the Vikings. I mean, it's just and you can hear all 3 of them if you want to. So no, I don't go and listen to Tua Tagovailoa. I don't go listen to him, and even though maybe I can learn how to pronounce his name if I did.
Yeah, and I don't think that these things. Jordan Love was very confident at the combine. Well, that's great. I mean, Johnny Manziel was confident. You know what I mean? I don't know if that tells us anything. I kind of liked his answers. I like his attitude. He very much intrigues me as a prospect, but I think the trap that we get into, Greg, is that none of us know how these guys are really going to perform. We just don't. It's a crapshoot. You go back to that Trubisky, Mahomes, Watson class. It's easy to say now, oh, Watson was all-world at Clemson, and he was a winner, and he could do this and this, and it was obvious that he was going to be a better player than Trubisky. There have been guys that have been great, decorated college quarterbacks who did nothing in the league. So it's just really hard to know who's going to be where. But I still think the Colts, I'm ready to just kind of get this situation over with because they're not going to give us a direct answer because they can't. You know what I mean? They're just talking in circles. It's like, we like Brissett, but we're open. And it's you said it in your column. They're talking out of both sides of their mouth, but I don't blame them for doing that. I think that's the proper way to handle it.
Ballard has to. I hopefully no one is taking umbrage with me writing that he's talking out both sides of his mouth. I then wrote, but he has to. He's trying. He wants it to be a secret. He wants people to think Jacoby's better than he is. He wants people to think they're going to draft a quarterback. He wants people to think they want to keep Jacoby and they want to draft a quarterback. That way there's more value to both. So I get that. You know what really intrigued me is this morning listening on ESPN, because again I wasn't at the combine myself, getting the lowdown on Tua Tagovailoa. I can say Antetokounmpo better than I can say that. But, the fact that the ideal situation for Tua is to go somewhere where they have a bridge quarterback for a year. And a team that needs a quarterback but doesn't need him right now, can afford to not use him yet, that's best for Tua. And I'm just thinking, I don't think Tua will be there at 13.
No.
But does that is that not the Colts to a T? There might be 5 or 6 teams, maybe, I don't know, that are like a year away. The Patriots might be if Brady comes back. We don't know. Anyway, the Colts, that is the Colts. They got Jacoby for one more year. You're not going to get much in value for him. Certainly you're not going to get in value what you've spent on him. So, man, if they can go get Tua, if he's as good as they say, although brittle, never mind. Yeah. I'd rather have Joe Burrow and his 4-inch hands than have Tua. Frankly, because Tua, we don't know if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, if you're going to get Tua, you got to absolutely get in front of Miami at 5, because every single mock draft that I've seen has him at least not getting past there, and then maybe even there's been talks about Detroit. And that would be really interesting to me if Detroit is thinking about taking him and then they're thinking about moving on from Stafford. I mean, as much as we've talked about Rivers and Brady and all these other guys, I think if Stafford came on the open market and if the Colts wanted to go after him, I'd be down for that. I know he's got some injury concerns and all of that, but still a lot to be decided. I mean, the funny thing about the Combine is that you feel like the season, the 2020 season's already begun, and then you realize, wait a minute, the draft is still 2 months away.
Yeah, and
it's crazy to think about.
The Combine, there's always really to me, because I love the city and I want us to have everything, including the Final Four every year. We're the best at that. I'm always intrigued that every year there's rumblings about the Combine's going to move, and this year I heard for the first time, scouting from people that would know that if the Combine were to go somewhere else, they would almost have to make it 2 weeks, because you can't squeeze in to 1 week all the medical stuff, all the news conferences, and the workouts. You can't squeeze that all into 1 week in most cities because there's just not enough time, because there's too much travel time, driving here and there. Here in Indianapolis, they can just walk there if they want. So I remember you talked about back in 2007 or whenever you had Forte. My favorite Combine moment was when I was at CBS, and the thing, if you remember, it used to be this big, weird secret. Like, you couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great.
Did they even have credentials back then? I'm trying to think if they did. I know they didn't let us in to watch the workouts or anything like that.
They had credentials, because my story is that you get a credential, and then you can go, interview the coaches, and they'd bring players to you. But you couldn't. I mean, you could do everything you do now, but you couldn't watch the workouts.
Yeah.
And of course, now they're televised in primetime, but you couldn't watch it back then. Well, that wasn't going to work for me. So I was here for CBS, and it was at, I guess it was Lucas Oil Stadium, and I just started walking through. Actually, I followed a caterer onto this back elevator, rode the elevator down, went through a couple hallways. Next thing I know, and I don't think it was McAfee. It was a punter for West Virginia, so I think it might have been Owen Schmidt.
Okay.
I mean, I think it might have been McAfee. I'm not sure. I remember a punter for West Virginia was trying to punt balls into a barrel, like for accuracy.
Wow.
And I was standing next to the barrel. Like, the media is not supposed to be. We can't even watch it. I'm on the damn field next to the barrel as these balls are coming my way. But then I thought I'm going to write this story and blah, blah, blah. And I realized as I sat down to write, you can't write that. You just broke every single rule. They might, prevent CBS from ever coming back. I mean, so I didn't ever wrote anything about it. But and what I was going to write is just, hey, look at me, guys. I broke into the Combine, which is a stupid thing to do. And so
but a great column. How I got banned for life from the NFL Combine.
How I got CBS banned for life and then parachuted to the IndyStar.
I know that you would have been heartbroken to be banned from the NFL Combine because you love it so
Oh,
much.
right. And it all comes full circle.
We got a lot of hoops to talk about as well.
Thank God.
Let's start with the college side. We'll get to the Pacers here in just a second.
Are we not going to talk about the fact that for the first time in 5 years, I've got a girlfriend? Are we not talking about that?
Usually I fit in the personal stuff like, hey, guys, by the way, I got fired. Or, hey, by the way, Greg has a girlfriend for the very end. But we can talk about that now if you want to.
Well, I just want to say.
By the way, let me just tell people because you can't see us right now. You're usually a pretty jovial guy for the most part, at least when I'm around you. And I know that, you would admit that you're not always like that.
I turn it on when we're around.
Yeah, there it is. We just had the escalator ride up here to the IndyStar floor, and you were like beaming the entire time about this girl. Like I could just tell. We all have friends that meet somebody and you can just kind of tell that it's going really well. It sounds like it's going really well for you.
Yeah, and my bosses, I feel bad for them because they're sitting over there and they're whatever the bosses do around here. They're working because I know, Nat, you're listening right now. I know you're working, but my point is I feel bad for them in that I've been so happy for about 3 weeks and I've been coming here almost every week to see you and do this podcast. I overwhelmed them with like enthusiasm, like in a bad way. I talk too much. I talk too fast. I'm too excited. And I've told them why. Like, there's a reason why I'm irritating right now. It's because I got a girlfriend. So we can move on. Nobody wants to hear about that, but I wanted to say it.
Oh, good for you. And you got a nice sweater on and everything?
I got my Mr.
You're not just
Rogers.
rolling in here in a hoodie like when we started the podcast, so you could tell that you're not a single guy.
Well, I'm going to go see her after this, so I got to look better.
Big week for IU. They go to the Barn, a place where they historically have not played well. Really, Purdue's got some nightmare performances in the Barn as well. They beat a kind of a mediocre Minnesota team, but still a great quad one road win for them, and then get a really important, super up and down, edge of your seat win over Penn State, which you were there in Bloomington for. And now it's so funny, Greg, how things change. Remember 2 weeks ago, Purdue had just beaten Indiana. They were on the way up. Indiana was on the way down.
Yep.
And now they flipped directions, and it looks like Purdue, if they still have tournament life at all, it's on life support, and Indiana looks like they'd have to play their way out at this point.
Yeah, two things. And not only does IU have that win on the road at Minnesota and that win at home against Penn State, but they also just yesterday locked up Christian Lander, the best point guard in the whole class of 2021, the best player in the state in 2021, would be Mr. Basketball next year, except for the fact that he's going to try and reclassify and be a freshman next fall. Well, this fall coming up. And I tell you what, that is so huge for Archie because, I mean, them getting to the tournament does change things. But barring a crazy run in the tournament this year, Archie's got 1 year he's got 1 year left to prove it. Mm-hmm. New AD's coming in. Archie's first three years, even if they go to the tournament this year, one and done, whatever they do, underwhelming. New AD comes in. If they're not very good next year, he's gone. I believe that. So you get Christian Lander coming in a year early. That's huge. But, yeah, IU is all of a sudden in a spot. What's weird about the IU-Purdue comparison is, and I haven't looked at the NET, the NCAA's net rankings, it's replaced the RPI as the most important tool. Not the only tool, not a end-all, be-all tool, but it's probably the most important of many tools to look at. Purdue has been 30 spots ahead of IU in the net rankings all year.
Yeah.
And
including
going into this weekend, and then Purdue was like, 32. IU was 58 maybe. Purdue, loses this weekend. IU wins. So I'm guessing the margin has been closed, but not very much. I bet Purdue's still 15 spots ahead. Meanwhile, IU's got 6 or 7 more wins. I get strength of schedule, but Purdue's non-conference schedule isn't that good. They beat Virginia, but it's not that. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't that much better than IU. So anyway, I don't understand the net rankings.
Yeah, and Indiana's got 6 quad one wins, including one over Florida State, who looks like they're going to be the ACC champs.
Yeah,
I mean that's a win that has really aged. We knew it was a good win at the time, but that's turned into a great win. I've been surprised that the computers have seemed to love Purdue so much more than Indiana as well, even though I think we would agree that Indiana's record is a little more hollow than what is it, 18-9?
Yeah,
a little more hollow than that because the first 8 games of the year they're playing basically local high schools.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, for them to kind of bounce back from a demoralizing loss against Purdue, where it looked like their season was on the brink, and respond the way that they've had with 3 quad one wins. And really, I'm just shocked that Purdue went in the opposite direction. I really felt like they found something, and I've been very surprised. That game against Michigan, which you're at every game, that game against Michigan, I can't believe that they didn't respond on their home court. And really, that game was never in doubt. I mean, Michigan kept them at arm's length the entire way.
And Painter he's at wit's end over what's going on here because it's one thing because they've been offensively challenged all year, and that's not a huge surprise, especially if Aaron Wheeler is not going to have a breakout year like we thought. And Harms has been a little bit worse than we thought offensively. And Nogel Eastern hasn't given him as much. I thought he would score 20, but I thought he'd be more than this, and a lot of people did. So they've been offensively challenged all year, but they still find a way to win because they're Purdue. They play defense, they play hard, they rebound. They're not doing that. I mean, they're not lazy and all that, but they, as Painter was talking about after the Michigan game, there's a 50-50 ball. We're not getting it these days, and that happens all game long. And it's just, even at home, it's very strange to watch them lose, not just because they can't score, which has been happening all year, but they're losing because they're getting out-competed and out-toughed, and that doesn't happen to Purdue.
No, and at this point, I mean, really, for them to get in, they're going to have to win these last 3 games, I think. Generally, when you're 14-14 and 11th place in your league, I know the Big Ten is a good league, and you got to find 68 teams somehow, but generally, entering March, if you're 14-14 and in 11th place, you're toast. Yeah. For an at-large bid. So, Purdue's got a long way to go. But, kind of circling it back to Archie and the recruiting momentum, that's really the one thing that Archie has done very, very well. And there's been no peaks and valleys. It's been all peak. Ever since day one, he has recruited at a very, very high level. This is exactly what Indiana fans wanted from the previous regime. And Archie is consistently, this will be perhaps their 3rd straight Mr. Basketball, depending on if Leal or Galloway wins this year.
Right.
And that's never happened before in program history, as Zach Osterman pointed out in his article today. It would be the 8th top 5 in-state recruit that Archie has landed in 3 classes. This is what Indiana fans wanted, right? They wanted to lock down the state, and Archie, it's really kind of, I think, the one compliment that you can give him through 3 years. He's been able to lock down the state.
Yeah, and as I said, Lander is Mr. Basketball next year if he plays. I mean, there's no doubt. Mm-hmm. So so if he reclassifies, but if Leal or Galloway gets it, that's in a way 4 straight Mr. Basketballs because it's the best player in the class 4 years in a row. So that's pretty remarkable. It's in a way though, it's damning praise, and I can hear Purdue fans because I've been seeing them on Twitter. I tweeted out Osterman's story and then his analysis piece about it, and of course Purdue fans are responding with, give Archie a lifetime contract, and it doesn't help him win games. And, that's what when your rival does something good, you, rather than just ignore it, which is what people ought to do, you try to undercut it somehow, but move the goalpost and talk about something else. But there is a point there where Archie is bringing in Romeo and Trace Jackson Davis and guys he's been bringing in, Demezy Anderson, and yet until this year it hasn't translated into W's, and really, except for this past week, no one was talking about this year translating either. So it's one thing to get those players, and that is great, but you got to do something with them.
Yeah, I'm excited that it's mostly backcourt guys too, because now if you're kind of projecting out, you'll have some veterans coming back like Durham and Finney, and then you bring in Leal and Galloway and potentially here Lander if he reclassifies. And I think that's where Tom Crean ran into some problems, was that he didn't have, in the latter years, he didn't have any leaders. He didn't have any guys that had been in the program for 3 or 4 years because a lot of them had either transferred or been run off. Yeah. And I think that was a big culprit into why things started to turn south for him.
Archie must know, and I realized Trace Jackson Davis told somebody, and I hope it wasn't Zach Osterman, but because I like Zach, but somebody asked Trace about 3 weeks ago, I've heard, about the NBA. And he said, no, I'm not going this year. To which I say 2 things. One is, don't ever ask a freshman that question in February. Don't do that. It's not – you're putting him in a bad spot, right? I mean, what is he supposed to say? And I believe he is coming back, but even if if he doesn't come back, are you going to write that he lied to you in February? Well, of course he lied if he goes. I mean, what else are you going to say? I got 12 games left. I can't tell my teammates I'm leaving them. So don't ask him. But if he does say those words that I'm coming back, IU fans, don't listen to it. It doesn't mean anything. It's like when we ask an AD when a coach is struggling in midseason, or we ask Jim Irsay if the Colts are 1-5 in Reich's first year, are you sorry you hired Reich? What do you want him to say? Yeah, I'm not firing him next week, but I wish I could.
Just what you go through with these 5 stars, right? I mean, Langford was asked over and over again, and I think he kind of towed the line there when we all knew Romeo Langford was never going to be more than a one-and-done player ever. He was never going to come back for a second year. There was no situation, even a catastrophic injury, he would have still probably gone and went and got the money.
Right.
And I don't blame him. I don't blame anybody for wanting to do that. But you're right. It does put these kids kind of in a tough spot.
I got to tell you that, and I forgot why I even brought that whole Trace Jackson Davis thing up. It wasn't just to rag on the fact someone asked that question. It was to say Archie must know that Trace is coming back, because you look at his recruiting, and they're losing Darren Davis. Not that he's great, but they're losing him. they need bigs, and
it's just Davis and Green, right? Those are the only seniors on the roster.
Right.
Yeah.
But if Trace is gone, then that's two of your best three. In a way, two of your best four if Race Thompson is what we think he is. So anyway, Archie must know that, or certainly believe that Trace is coming back because he keeps adding guards, and I don't see any help on the horizon as far as big men go. So he must really think Trace is coming back. And for Trace's sake, hope he does. He's an NBA player, and probably even right now, I'm sure he'd be on a roster. I'm sure he would. I'm sure he's a first-round pick. But you watch him play, and he's a very good college post player. But you can't if that's all he is right now, maybe he's got more and we're not seeing it, which is okay. But if what we see is all he is, you can't play in the NBA like that. At that size, back to the basket, trying to out-athlete people, you can't do that.
He's a little bit of a throwback, isn't he? I think comparatively speaking to a lot of kids that are his size that want to step out and shoot, and he doesn't seem to as often want to do that.
And much like Luka Garza, of course, much different level of athlete, but much like Luka Garza, what he needs is to do whatever it takes to come back next year and be a stretch guy, that you can shoot threes and you can do other stuff, because I don't care what kind of athlete you are. I mean, unless you're a Zion Williamson athlete, and he's not. 6'9", 225 is not getting it done in the NBA on the low block.
Where's Butler go from here after a disastrous afternoon in Creighton? Even though I think Creighton, it might be Final Four good. Like, they look scary, scary good, but they blew the doors off of Butler in that game.
They did. They got a great coach. The Big East. Whenever you mention the Big East being tough, and I've done that on Twitter a time or two, in my story too, I guess, to explain why Butler's, and this is a few games ago, but to explain why it's so hard to keep winning is the Big East. People want to crap on it, and I guess it's not the Big Ten. I'll give you that, but the Big East has not become Conference USA overnight. It's still legit. But Butler, well, shoot, we don't. First of all, we got to find out, is their backcourt healthy? We don't know. That's huge. But Butler, to me, and I wonder, and I have to admit, and that I'm not a basketball such an expert that I can break down what I'm watching. I can break down players sometimes, but I can't break down schemes. I have no idea. But I wonder if, because I've been saying all year, whether in my stories or to you, that I really don't know why Butler's winning. I don't, they're tough and they're smart and they're unselfish and there's a lot of great qualities, but they're just not very good. But they keep winning, and Laval must be great, and I think he is pretty good and all that. I just wonder if maybe as the season goes on, there's more film to break down, if teams are just exploiting whatever it is you can exploit when a team is as untalented, relatively speaking, as Butler is. Butler's talented, but they're not number 5 in the country talented. They're not top 25 in the country talented. I think Water's finding its level right now, and I just hope they can hang on and get in the tournament, which is a weird thing to say. And I think the only way they don't get in is that they don't win again. And even then they might.
Yeah, they're not going to lose to DePaul at home on Saturday. I can't imagine. Look, if Baldwin and Thompson don't play, they could lose to anybody. But if they've got at least one of those guys available, I don't think. DePaul is the one, not gimme. They're not as bad as they've been, but that's the game that should be the easiest one to get on your, at home.
If you're at full strength, you beat DePaul without much problem. But we just don't know. And without Kamar Baldwin, they're not a one-man team at all, but he is – I mean, he is so much better than everybody else in terms of getting his own shot. He doesn't need anybody's help. Everybody else needs help to get a shot. He doesn't need it. And if you take him off the floor, and he's a great defensive player, you take him off the floor, that's just a terrible loss for Butler.
And it's funny how we kind of did this with the Colts. It's funny how you evaluate a season based on how you change your expectations early. Like, if the Colts never started 5-2, don't you think we would have digested that season a little bit differently? And I think if Butler had never reached number 5 in the polls, I think we would digest this season differently. Because what were they picked to finish in the Big East? Like 8th?
Oh, yeah, they were.
And, if you would have told me before the season that Butler was going to be in the 8-9 game, I would have signed up for that in 2 seconds. But because they started so well, you were kind of left wanting more.
Yeah, by 8-9 game, you mean NCAA tournament.
In the NCAA tournament, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Colts. If the night Luck retired, if that night you said, hey, they're going to go 7-9.
I picked them to go 7-9.
Right. You say, okay, we'll take that.
Yeah.
We'll take that. So, yeah, it's sometimes you win too much too fast, and it makes the fans a little bit crazy because and I get it. I mean, you see your team winning, you think, okay, this is who we are. Well, not really who you are at all times.
I was kind of hoping the Pacers would kick that margin above 40. Instead, they won by 39 last night because I'd have to imagine they'd be one of, if not the first team in NBA history to lose a game by 40-plus and then win a game by 40-plus in back-to-back games.
I wonder if that's still the biggest margin going,
Yeah, from 2 separate games.
Yeah, because the margin, they lost by 40 plus and won by 39, so that's a margin
85.
85.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's ever happened. I mean, really,
It's crazy.
very hard to do.
Yeah.
And it's weird that the Pacers did it at all, given what they're going through with injuries and Oladipo, and maybe there's an update right now that I don't know about. But I don't, his knee's not a concern. But still, anytime that guy has to miss a game for any reason at all physically, other than we're just resting him, that's not good.
I'm punting this season. We can come back and you can point out how I was wrong on the pod if they end up making a run. But I'm officially punting on the Pacers season. The Lamb injury, just everything, the way that they've played so far this month. I was skeptical that they were a contender anyway, but yeah. I think this was always, going to be a little bit of a transition year, don't you, Greg? Once the Oladipo injury happened last January.
Yeah, and they, to talk about the Colts starting too fast and Butler starting too fast, their record was weird. I mean, they've got a lot of nice players, and when everybody's healthy, and before Oladipo came back, they have a lot of B to B plus players, maybe more than a lot of teams have. I've never looked at it that closely, but they got a lot of nice players. But they don't have anybody. Well, Sabonis is becoming a star. How about Sabonis, by the way? Last night, I don't know, it's 20, 14, and 9. I mean, he's becoming a triple-double threat every couple, 3 games. He either has one or comes damn close. And it's so interesting to me that, for about a year or two, speaking of easy radio topics, all you got to do is say, Turner or Sabonis, who should they keep?
Yep.
There's 4 hours.
We did that. Yeah, we did that a lot.
And that was a debate for a while.
It was.
And no one's asking that question anymore.
No. Now the only question is, do you trade Turner or do you keep him long term?
Right.
That's because can he coexist with Sabonis, which it's given kind of whatever results. I still think the jury is out as far as that's concerned. You can check out all of his recent columns, the Ballard Costanzo from the Combine deal, IU Penn State from over the weekend, also the Purdue loss to Michigan. Just go to IndyStar.com/sports, also the Gregg Doyel tab as well, or on the mobile app.
We're done already?
Yeah, 32.
Damn it.
Right
I do want to say real quick, I got a story. So today's Wednesday. I got a story going online probably tomorrow on Ray Pavey. I don't know if Ray Pavey and Jimmy Rail played in arguably, and I think definitely the most famous regular season high school game in our state's history. Not a tournament game, not a Milan game, but regular season. There's only one that I even know of that has a name for it. It's called the Church Street Shootout. Yeah, they played, and they were vying for the conference scoring championship. And this is back in the late 50s, early 60s when guys averaged 20 a game, and that was great. Well, this night, Jimmy Rail scored 49. Ray Pavey scored 51.
No three-point line, right?
Right.
2.
One guy had 49, one guy had 51.
Wow.
So anyway, the game's famous. They both signed with IU. Jimmy Rail becomes an IU star and plays for the Pacers. Ray Pavey is in a car crash before his junior year. He and Rail both would have been juniors. Pavey is a car crash, paralyzed, and he's been paralyzed, obviously, ever since. And anyway, the Church Street Shootout turned 61 earlier this week. And I went to the nursing home where Ray Pavey is, and people celebrated the birthday of that shootout. And who was there? Jimmy Rail died a couple years ago. Jimmy Rail's widow and Jimmy Rail's son was there. So we had a Pavey and Rail party to celebrate the Church Street Shootout. So that column's coming up soon.
Awesome. Keep an eye out for that, and we'll be back with more Doyle and Derek podcasts next week. See you then, Greg.
Yep, bye.